Hi, everybody. Thanks for tuning in today to Deborah Kobylt Live. How are you? Thank you for playing Animals. And I chose that song today because very often our kids can act like animals. And then, quite frankly, we end up as parents turning into animals. So we have on our show today a very interesting guest, a friend of the show, Neil Brown. Some applause for Neil Brown.
Hi, Deborah.
Hey, how are you? Thanks for being here. You are the author, you're a family therapist and a teacher. You're also the author of Ending the Parent-Teen Control Battle. And we've got you on today to talk about, in particular, parental burnout. So we talked about this a little bit on the phone yesterday, and I would say most of us with kids eventually end up with parental burnout. What is parental burnout?
Okay, well, I think it's true that most of us with kids will feel burnt out from time to time, but I think that's a generic expression. It's just kind of, oh yeah, I'm over it, I'm tired, I need a break. And that's all true, but what I'm talking about is a more serious condition. It's when parents start to feel totally ineffective, they start to lose hope, they can experience depression, anxiety, sleeplessness, and start to feel really ineffective and be less effective in their role as parents.
Right. All right, but you say support, right? I mean, a lot of people, most people have got to go to work 9 to 5. Most people don't have anyone to really help them with their kids. You really have to be a team, right? So a lot of times that starts to go by the wayside. You know, maybe somebody is asking, can you take the kid to preschool? Can you feed the baby? Can you do this? You really have to be in sync together, right, as parents.
Well, you're right on track. We definitely need support. In other words, you can't do everything by yourself, and it's not good for the kids, and it's not good for us. So, yes, we need to get our needs met. We need to know that someone knows what we're doing, sees what we're doing, recognizes positively what our efforts are, can see what we're doing well, and can even give us some advice about things that we could do better or differently. That's number one. We do need to get our emotional needs met. That's true. But, you know, there's this other factor that causes, or actually a couple of factors that cause parental burnout. One is when parents get caught up in a loop with their kids. So parents keep pushing to get certain things done or get their kids to perform in certain ways or to stop doing certain negative behaviors. And they keep working at it, and kids keep resisting those efforts. And then what happens is it develops into a pattern of interaction, which is about, my book is about. It's called the control battle. And once we get into a negative pattern of interaction, all the parents' efforts are going to be swallowed up and made ineffective by the pattern itself. So that's a great cause of parental burnout. And of course, the third one, Deborah, is the issue of me time. Everybody needs to leave work and go someplace for themselves. They need to be able to play some tennis, have a cup of coffee with a friend, go for a walk, paint, do their favorite thing, go play their flute in the local community band. We all need downtime. We can't all just be workers. And parenting, as you well know, is a real job, and it's very stressful, and we need alternative behaviors that take care of ourselves.
You know, I like that phrase, it takes a village, because I really do believe it takes a village, and some of us have parents nearby, and some of us don't. Some of us have family nearby, some of us don't. Many of us have friends, but friends very often can be on different schedules, and even they can't help you. I just think that in today's society, I think it's got to be a little tougher raising your kids when you've got to deal with social media 24/7. And I say that because no longer are people coming home from work and shutting down at 6 or 7 o'clock. They keep going until midnight, until they fall asleep half dead. So what do you do to change that? It's easy to say, we got to change it, turn it off, but nobody's turning it off, and then they're burning out. Like, how do you discipline yourself to do it? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, that's an excellent question, and you know, I have a couple of thoughts about it. One is that I think men in general are much better at simply taking care of themselves and saying, you know, I'm done, or I'm not going to take care of the kids anymore. They can figure out what they want for lunch, or I'm done with work, I'm closing it off. And yet I think women have it in their culture and in their upbringing to always be concerned that they haven't done enough.
Oh,
and
absolutely. You
and they're
know,
responsible for everyone else's needs. So if there's more that needs to be done at the office, if there's more that needs to be done at home, if their partner isn't happy yet, if their kids aren't happy yet, they'll work well beyond their appropriate limits and get themselves into a state of burnout.
so are you saying the answer here is just listen to what the woman wants to do, and then everything will be just fine at home?
Well, I think women are going to need a lot of encouragement to set boundaries and get support, and and they need that from each other, and they need that from their partners.
I think you're right. And I know it, even in my case, and we have three sons, when they were younger, it was kind of easier because, you just sort of put them in the car, take them where you're going. It was just sort of a little bit more like that. Even if a kid was crying, at least you can deal with it. But as they get older and they've got their own individual personalities, needs, wants, whatever, I know myself, I tend to be a little stricter, a little bit more disciplined. And John will often say, it'll be fine. They'll work itself out. And I'm like, wait a minute. And that's where I found a discrepancy even for myself. And sometimes I feel maybe not listened to, a little burned out. What do you do in that case?
Well, I sympathize because you don't want to be undermined, and I think maybe your husband needs to hear "happy wife, happy life." But yes,
I am
think
going to repeat that all night. I'm going to play it back and back. I'm going to play it over the loudspeaker tonight when he comes through the door. I'm going to tell him that you said it, Neil.
We don't want to undermine the strict parent, and yet women need to get used to the idea that they should not always be the gatekeeper. In other words, how horrible is it going to be if they go away for a half a day and let their husbands be in charge and then come back and everything isn't in order? Well, that's a learning experience for everybody, and it's not the end of the world. Things don't have to run perfectly, and kids can work out their own relationship with their husbands or their partners. I don't mean to sex stereotype everybody. And they can, they can work it out. They don't always have to have mom in there running the whole show, and moms have a habit of taking on too much. And
we absolutely do. It's like,
yeah.
I have to be somewhere at 4. Okay, I'll take you, but then there's 3 other things that have to be done at 4:00. As moms, we have to let something go and take a step back and realize it's okay.
And then dad does it, and dad does it wrong, and then mom gets all upset, and then she'll never let dad do it again, and then she overloads herself.
Yeah, I mean, I see that as definitely a common dynamic. But how do you get through to people? Because essentially what you're asking people to do is change their personalities. And that's what's tough. And I think very often that's what gets in between people's marriages. We're able to successfully sort of work it out sometimes. But for a lot of people, they're not able to do that. And then there goes the end of the marriage when really they could have somehow found a way or a balance to work it out. What do you think?
Well, I think it's not so much changing a personality as it's adding flexibility to our personalities. In other words, we all have personalities, and some are more competitive and aggressive, and some are shyer and more deferential. However, we don't have to be a slave to that. And the shy, deferential person can learn to get their voice, and the competitive, assertive person can learn to listen better and be more flexible. We don't want to be prisoners of our personalities. We want our personalities to work for us. We don't want to work for them. So when I'm working with couples and I'm working with families, I'm introducing the notion of growing our personalities, growing ourselves, not being fixed and letting our personalities run the show.
That's very clever, especially, to get a man sometimes in the room can be difficult. And if you just approach it just like you said, you're not fixing anything, you're growing. You're just adding to the growth of one's life. I think that's very smart, actually. You also talked about some people, especially particularly women, they will often sometimes feel isolated. They end up depressed and feeling hopeless. In your book, you actually talked about one woman who was hoping that she would get kidnapped just so she could disappear from her life for a while. While it's a little humorous, it's also really sad too, right?
Yeah, it is. And, very often it's less common. It's more common now for men to be primary child care, but it's still largely women who take on the largest level of responsibility for child care. And so they're the ones that are more likely to burn out, be at home, and get isolated. And I think that happens more when kids are young and when kids have special needs. Those are the 2 places where I think women are at most risk
for that kind of burnout. Oh, absolutely. One
yeah.
of my producers, she has a little child at home, and I very often will say to her, did you get out? Go to the park? Because otherwise it's true. You feel so isolated sitting at home. You're like, oh my gosh, I'm in this game all by myself. The kid's crying, and you're thinking, will there ever be a break? So even if you're getting along great with the husband, by the time he gets home, you're like, ugh, right? So
yeah, and then getting to the parks very often with a difficult kid or several kids can be such a production between everybody getting their bathroom needs met, their clothing needs met, get fed, get in the car, get the car seats going, get them to the park, and so we can have a good time. Sometimes people will say, you know what, I'm just going to watch TV. I'm going to let the kids play with the devices, and the heck with it. Which means, of course, that the kids aren't going to be doing as well, and that's going to be more of a struggle in the long run. So it kind of builds on itself.
I have to tell you, Neil, I very often think that the simplicity in life is starting to go away, and depending upon where you live, it's a little crazier. You know, in LA, for example, there's so much to do, so many places to take the kid. Same with a lot of the cities, New York, Miami, Chicago. If we just try to take a step back and go do something simple, a park, just a park, and let the kid find a stone, a rock, throw it in the weeds. I think that those are some of the best days, and if we can try to dial it back, I don't know.
Changing the environment is very important for all of us. If we can get in a little bit of nature, a little bit of place where kids don't have to be micromanaged, where they can have a little bit of freedom to go explore and learn and play and be active, I think that's great for everybody.
What do you say? I mean, there are 3 causes of burnout. We talked about that, but what are some of the causes, the cures for the parent burnout?
Well, the cures are implied by the causes. So if parents are in a negative loop with their kids where they keep pushing and kids keep resisting, then we have to look at the pattern itself as the object of change. We want to change that pattern.
I've had that too. I've had it all. I swear to God.
Yeah. Parents need to stop trying to change the kid and change the pattern. And that means they can change their tone, and they can shift from trying to manipulate their kids into behaving to putting that burden back on the kids and say, look, you don't have to behave. That belongs to you. But I want you to know that the privileges come when you do these things. That's up to you. You don't have to have your privileges. I'd love for you to have your privileges, but it's on your side. I'm not going to manipulate you. I'm not going to feed you. I'm not going to reward you. It's entirely up to you. You earn the privileges. You get the privileges. And I'm on your side.
In a perfect world, that does work. But I'm telling you, you've got to have, you've got to be parenting together on that kind of a thing, because that's where I know a lot of people, they're struggling with that right now, particularly with teenagers. They parent differently in that way. And my opinion, and I'm not an expert at all, you've got to try and get on the same page if you can.
Well, it's good to be close, but parents have different strengths, and parents have different ways of promoting it. Yes, if one parent is saying, no, you're staying home tonight, and the other one says, oh, you can go out the back door, it's fine with me, that's...
Oops, I think we lost you for a second. Can you give us a call back? I think we lost you there. Tony, we calling him back, or did we get a second show? What just happened?
Press 0. Answering service operator. I'm in the office.
That's his answering machine. Hey, everybody, I'm also awfully sorry about this, but this is what happens when live TV goes on. So maybe we should take a quick break. Do we have him back?
Hi, I got cut off.
What the heck happened? I don't know what happened to you. So I don't know if you're on your cell phone or not. I apologize about that. We're going to have to edit that out. But what were we were discussing the 3 cures. Go ahead.
Parents are on different pages.
Right. So, like I said, with the experience that I have because I'm at the teenage years, you've got to be able to coordinate at least how you feel, or at least talk about it and hear each other, because that's where you start to see a lot of the divorces and where people go wrong, and you think, geez, they've been married 15 years, 20 years. What happened? They were so much fun at the party. So I think that's where you need to look too, because I think the burnout comes where nobody's listening to each other. And then
You're absolutely right.
The kid's not going to listen either,
Yeah.
Because if the parents aren't listening to each other, what is the kid going to listen for?
Yeah, exactly. So I think that's a great idea, right? That you have right there is let's, as a family, let's make listening to each other a value, and let's all work at that. Let's all work at being better listeners. We'll listen to our kid better, our kid will listen to us better, and we'll listen to each other better.
Hey,
So
look,
I think that's a really good idea.
you've been doing this a while. How have things changed? How have the rules changed? How has this game changed since social media and since 24/7 television on, you've got Netflix and Amazon, everything on demand. It's just, you're just pulled in so many different directions and you're more autonomous. No longer do you have the family telephone. Everybody's got their own cell phone. There's just nothing that you sort of build around. Do you know what I mean? Not even, you're watching your own programming. You're got your own phone. So,
Yeah, you're hitting on an important topic, Deborah, and the issue is that we are getting more isolated from each other in families. It's easier for families to be disengaged. It's harder for families to coordinate, have family meals, have family fun time, have cleanup time. Everyone's watching their own devices and distracted by their own devices. It used to be that occasionally I needed to help a family turn off the TV and have dinner together. Now I've got to have 6 people turn off their devices and come to the table. And it's been I see much more of a free-for-all, and I see kids much more influenced by social media than by their families. So it's very important, and I have a very strong message for families out there, is don't give away your power. You are the important folks in your kids' lives, and let's empower and strengthen the family. Let's not be deferential to the social media.
But like I said, these are words, and these are great words, right? But they're on paper. The reality is people are, they're a little emotional. They're impassioned. They've got stuff going on at home. The kid's running around. Somebody's in trouble, whatever. And everybody's just sort of running on, a little bit of emotion. How do you just stop and just center it again and just come back as a family? For me, I say you've got to simplify. I just think there's too many things coming at us between work, 24/7 social media stuff. I really do. I say simplify. And, we have a lake house, right? And it's small. And we hardly have, gosh, I think we just got TV in there because I didn't even want it. But it's forcing us to do what? Sit at the table and play games. Remember those things? Board games?
Yeah.
It's like, we have the best time. Getting them to come to the table to do that, it's like, I don't want to. I'm like, well, guess what? There's nothing else to do. So you're going to do it. And I find that they don't fight as much about
When
coming to
there's
the
a
table to
structure,
do it.
yeah. A lot of parents will, get all upset and they'll take their kid's phone away. Well, they'll find out when they take their kid's phone away that they have a happy kid and their kid's the best and the most engaged and the most engaging and the most positive that they've had them in months.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. It's
not a bad thing to have some structure and have some limits. So I like it. Thursday night board games, or how about
impose something like
Tuesday
that.
night reading?
Yeah. Oh boy. Tuesday night, whatever. My one of my kids is not much of a reader, but he'd rather be out and play baseball, so that's his thing. But I like the Thursday night something. Cards, board game. Mandatory dinner, no matter what. We at least have one night a week, no matter what anybody's doing. We have to sit down and sit at the table. It may not last forever, but that's what we do. We try. We at least try. So at least if you can find one thing, right, that works for your family, have at it. Anyway, any parting words?
Try something new and look to the strength of the kids. You might have a kid who's like an artist, a good artist. Well, then let's go on an outing and let's all go and bring our drawing pads, and we'll bring our drawing pads. We'll go out there and we're all going to take 40 minutes and we'll draw whatever it is that's in front of us that we want to draw, and then we'll hike home. Have an outing based on your kid's strength.
I love that. But like I said, I think that game changes a little bit when they're older because they're 16 and they're like, you want to do what? You want me to get a pad and go to the nearby park and draw? Forget it.
When you set it up early,
yep.
When you establish these routines early and you maintain them, kids want to see them. They'll come back from college and they'll say, can we go one of our drawing walks again? Because it's meaningful to them. It's part of what they experience, as part of how they feel connected to their families.
We're finding that too.
We can't be afraid of upsetting our 16-year-olds because we want them to go on a darn hike.
I think you just hit it. You can't be afraid of upsetting your 16-year-old. Too many parents want to be friends with kids, and they don't want to parent. So, you just have some common sense advice, and people really need to come to the table and listen. At least try one or two strategies, right? Don't be their friend, and try and impose one thing a week where you can get together. that's a start, right?
I love it. Absolutely. And everyone's going to benefit. If you do that, I promise you, you will all benefit from it.
So for people who want to get in touch with you, Neil Brown, how do they do that?
NeilDBrown.com is the easiest way to do that. It goes right to my website. I just released a TED Talk that's out today. And
oh, wonderful.
There's all my podcasts and my blogs and a way to message me.
You're terrific. You're very common sense. You're fun about it. You keep it moving and nice and light. And your book, of course, Ending the Parent-Teen Control Battle. Pick that up on Amazon, right? Or any bookstore.
Absolutely. Or your Barnes & Noble bookstore, your local bookstore.
Yeah, let's not forget to go to the local bookstore. That's a big one. Okay, thanks so much for joining us. We'll have you on again soon, okay?
Thanks, Deborah. A pleasure.
Okay, thanks so much. And everybody, thank you so much for being here today for a terrific edition of Deborah Kobylt Live. We'll see you again soon.